that would like to participate in this public hearing today? This is for the supplemental budget to fund $600,000 for the baler.
No.
Okay. Okay, seeing no interest in that public hearing, it is now closed. Bid awards. There are none today. Brings us to visitors' views related to items on today's agenda. So, will you speak first and state your name, who you represent, please, and then just come to the podium when the prior speaker is done. And if you could try to limit it to 3 minutes, that would be wonderful.
Easy. Barbara Fish, and I'm representing myself and the library board. Just wanted to say that the budget is a challenge for Petersburg and for every place in Alaska this year. And I wanted to thank Steve and Debbie and the entire assembly for continuing the process of creating a balanced budget and including all of us in the procedure. Now, since I'm involved in the library board and the Friends of the Petersburg Library, my heart is tied to keeping the library a vibrant part of the community. I realize that some things may need to change, and we all want that change to be as positive as possible. The cutback that has been talked about and requested that the library be closed an additional 7 to 8 hours per week is, I think I did the math right, 14 to 16% of the total hours the library is now open. That seems very excessive, especially considering that the library is open 50 hours a week right now. The only solutions are increased revenue and or cuts in expenses. And I don't have a solution to that. I'm not here to say that. But I do have a couple questions that I don't expect to be answered today. But how much revenue is coming from the $100 that is being charged seniors to get the senior tax exemption card? And there's also an increase in revenue from sales of marijuana, tobacco, and liquor. And I don't know what that figure is, and I don't expect an answer today. But eventually, I would assume that those are 2 items that are increases in revenue. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Who would like to speak next? Just come forward, state your name and who you represent, please.
I'm Cindy McDonnell, and I'm representing myself and the library board. And I just wanted to comment on the proposed cuts to library funding, which would potentially result in reduced open hours for the library. I'm concerned that reduced hours would have a direct impact on public access to the library's services and programs. Reduced hours would also affect access to the library by out-of-town visitors to Petersburg. In addition, since the library is not open on Sundays currently, reduced Saturday hours would especially impact many families who frequent the library together. And that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Who would like to speak next? Okay.
I'm James Kerr. I'm representing myself. We all want to save money in the potential budget discussion items. I don't think we should be talking about that until we actually see where we sit in our budget. I mean, a lot of the stuff that's on here is quality of life issues that we've all come to enjoy in Petersburg. And so I think that it's creating a lot of issues within the community, a lot of heartburn among individuals that talk about it. And so, I mean, I'm sure we can cut our budget. I'm sure department heads can cut their budgets some ways, but a lot of the stuff I see, like I said, are quality of life issues. I do agree with the addition of the EMT and raising rates. Our rates are really low here in Petersburg, and I think that's something that definitely needs to be looked into. But yeah, I don't see a need to be talking about this stuff until we get the numbers from Jody to see where we sit in our budget. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thanks for your comments. And before we have the next person come up, I'd like to just kind of reiterate a little bit what Mr. Kerr said. The budget process doesn't start to schedule budget workshop session is April 1st. First reading of the budget isn't until May 6th. So this is just ideas from departments of ways to cut the budget. So you're right, this is prioritizing a list and setting a policy potentially about how to cut or generate revenue, cut the budget or generate revenue. So nothing is going to really take place, if I'm not mistaken, until June 3rd will be the third reading scheduled. So anyway, next visitor, please.
Hello, my name is Amy Anderson. I'm representing myself and the Petersburg Ragnarok Rollers. So I'm going to read aloud a letter that we submitted to you guys earlier today. Dear Petersburg Borough Assembly, the Petersburg Ragnarok Roller Derby League would like to express our strong objection to closing the gym on Sundays. Of the 2 nights a week that we are scheduled for the gym, Sunday night is our main practice time. Our league currently has 24 members. We are teachers, fishermen, healthcare professionals, law enforcement, and even borough workers. For us, roller derby is not just a sports team, but is more like a family. Our 2 practices a week are a way for us to stay healthy and connected during the dark winter months. Our team is actively representing Petersburg community throughout Alaska. In October, we went to Sitka to compete. We will be traveling to Wasilla this week, and we're planning on participating in Mayfest as well. For our league to remain viable and competitive, we require at least 2 practice days a week, which is much less than other teams throughout the state. Our team also contributes financially to the borough for using the facility. The players on our team not only have memberships with Parks and Rec, but we pay additional floor fees annually, which average about $1,500. Besides using the gym on Sunday evenings for practice, we also skate with our families during the open gym time on Sunday afternoons. That is also a time for our beginner skaters to improve their skills. The community center gym has very limited time available for public use. Afternoons and early evenings are reserved for school activities. This leaves only 1.5 hours at night for the rest of the public. As residents of this community, we are acutely aware of the current financial situation and the challenges that face the borough. We are open to working with Parks and Rec for an alternative solution. However, we deeply disagree that closing the community gym on Sundays is the right answer. And sincerely, Petersburg Board of Directors.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to talk to issues related to today's agenda?
Got to put my eyes on. Hi, my name is Victoria Moore, and I'm representing myself as well as the Petersburg Ragnarok Rollers. My family and I have been a part of this community for over 3 years. I opposed the option of closing Parks and Rec Center on Sundays. I understand what the borough is facing and the budget cuts, but closing on Sundays I feel will have a long-term effect on the residents. My family has faced many challenges over the years. Our son, Alex, currently 12 years of age, has autism. He was diagnosed when he was 2 years old. He also has type 1 diabetes, as well as hypothyroid disease. Since he was 4 years old, my husband Joshua and I have been active advocates for our son to ensure his mental health, physical health, and spiritual needs are met. We have a specific medical disabilities waiver from the state of Alaska to help us reach specific goals for our son. As I stated before, with his challenges and his needs, physical health is very important for him to have a healthy lifestyle. We have just set up with direct service providers to help us meet Alex's goals. And this will happen every Sunday to teach Alex how to use the equipment and to teach him the importance of physical activity to keep his blood glucose at healthy levels. We chose Sundays due to I play for the Petersburg Ragnarok Rollers, and our practice times is on Sunday, 5 to 7 p.m. This way I can be on the premises to be available for my son and the direct service provider as the issues can arise with his disabilities, and I can help problem solve. I also have had my own challenges throughout my life. I have suffered with seasonal affective disorder. This affects millions every year. This can lead to severe depression during the winter months, and it can lead to thoughts of death and suicide. Most effective treatment is self-care and physical activity, and by cognitive behavioral therapy, a talk therapy, in which for me, it's through social engagement with my roller derby teammates and during classes held at Parks and Rec Center. Since moving here and becoming a member of Parks and Rec and the roller derby team, I haven't suffered from seasonal affective disorder as I have in the past. This is why I feel closing on Sundays, where for most residents, it is the time for families to be together and engage in healthy environment, especially in our darkest months. Maybe as a solution, closing on Sundays during the summer when there are less activity due to families are engaged in outdoor activities can be an alternative solution. Thank you for hearing me and for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Anybody else in the audience that would like to speak to today's agenda?
Hello, my name is Angela Christensen, a third-generation Petersburg community member and a skater on the local roller derby team, the Petersburg Ragnarok Rollers. I would like to address the suggested Parks and Rec facility closure on Sundays. I want to urge you to vote no on this matter or any further discussion. I understand that Sundays are one of the less frequented days at the gym, and closing for 6 hours would save you less than $20,000 annually. However, it will have a huge impact on some in this community, in particular the first ever adult roller derby league, the Petersburg Ragnarok Rollers. We started this nonprofit group in 2012 and have been dedicated to its practice times every fall, winter, and spring since then. This is the 6th year as an official team. We have one weekday, Wednesdays 7:30 to 9, and one weekend day, Sundays 5 to 7. I feel that most importantly, I coach beginner roller derby on Sundays from 3 to 5 during open skate time at the gym. Most of the team went through my Sunday program where they can improve their skating skills with dedicated coach to help them out. Losing Sunday would be taking more than half of our team's practice opportunity away. A lesser known fact about our community gym schedule would be that the adult sports leagues, open gym, and other non-school related user groups only have 1.5 hours during the weekday to find gym time available for use. The rest of the day is pinned for school use and not available for the community for regular scheduled activities during the school year. Saturday and Sunday are vital to the other user groups, and losing one day will crowd an already tight gym schedule. If cutting the facility hours is the best you can come up with, maybe consider extending the summer closure time or shortening the summer hours from 8 to 8, perhaps closing on Sundays during the summer. This would not impact the winter activities and the community members, users, who most certainly enjoy the warm facility during the long winter weekends. The nicer summer months leaves less to desire at the gym, and our team takes a break in the summers. I believe in the Borough Assembly to make the best fiscal decisions with the least impact to the community. Please consider a different item to cut from the budget that doesn't so strongly impact the quality of life of one of the user groups most affected by taxation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Anybody else in the audience today with views related to items on today's agenda?
My name is Chelsea Tremblay, and I am here representing myself, but wearing my hat as chair of the library board. And since I joined the board in 2013, I've seen the way the community has embraced the new building. Our usage rates have never been higher. We keep finding new grants and resource sharing opportunities, like the statewide interlibrary loan system, that saves us money while dramatically expanding what is offered to the public. We keep finding new ways to collaborate with others in the community, which we all benefit from. At the same time, we have managed a stable budget while knowing cuts are always potentially one budget cycle away from reality. Our goal through all of this has been how to be stalwart stewards of this invaluable public resource so many in our community treasure, while keeping the big picture of the budget in mind. We to benefit from the knowledge and resources of the museum. The radio is just one essential way of communicating what is going on each week. Parks and Rec is where everyone can get the woolies out, so we don't have to test the soundproofing of the kids' room too thoroughly. I could go on, but I'm just trying to get to the point. We all need each other. There are some hard decisions down the line, but I'm not sure these cuts are a wise one. It means a lot to hear people speak up for these special places, the treasures that are worth defending. And I encourage you to draft a budget with that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak? Please state your name and who you represent.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Joshua Adams. I represent myself. I just wanted to talk to something that's tangentially related to the budget cuts and all that, which actually is really related in a way that we might not be thinking of in the immediate process. I mean, you guys are thinking about getting a new baler and all that, and I suppose that the baler is necessary to package up our garbage and the recyclables. And I wanted to talk about that, the recycling. First off, we got two totes, right? We got a green tote, we got a blue tote. Well, the green tote is a net minus. It's a loss. Everything you throw into that, you pay for it twice. You pay for it when you buy it, you pay for it when you ship it down south, and you pay for it again, actually, when you sell it. The green tote, you pay for it once, you ship it down south, and you get a little bit back for it. Now we're thinking about how we can save money, and this is a way in which we are throwing away money every time we literally throw something away. The more that we can get in that blue tote, the less we have to spend to get rid of our garbage. And garbage here in Petersburg is more expensive than a lot of places I know. And it doesn't have to be that way. I don't think we recycle enough, and I don't think we incentivize our community to recycle more. There's a lot more that we could be doing, and especially there's a lot more that we could be recycling. Take, for example, non-ferrous metals. A lot of the things that people would throw away because there's no curbside institution in place, those things we end up paying for as garbage. Those clock radios, those old radiators, those car alternators, those things get 25 cents a pound. Now, I understand the idea behind this. For example, glass, which is not aggressively recycled or separated, we don't have the space. It's only 10 cents a pound. I mean, what is that, $200 a ton? Same with ferrous metals. Ferrous metals are going for, 13 cents a pound right now, depending if they're clean, 6 or 7 cents if they're not, like old cars. But the thing is, if you recycle those items that are cheaper, you end up saving yourself money immediately and a lot more down the road because you don't have to throw them away. And when you get people into the attitude that, oh, we can recycle just about everything, they recycle more and they throw away less, and it costs everyone a lot less. And I mean a lot less. Our garbage is really expensive and it costs everyone. This is just something that I wanted to bring to mind because you guys are thinking about getting a new baler, and this is an ideal moment to think about the present and the future at the same time. We also get people in the attitude that we can recycle everything. When the prices of these items, like, for example, maybe glass, but definitely ferrous metals and plastics, which are in a slump right now, those are non-renewable resources, gang. Who's making more of that stuff? We could look forward to our future in the next 20 years of metal and everything else getting more and more expensive because we've only got one planet and it's very limited. This is a way that we can help our planet and our community and our budget all at once. Just wanted you to think about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else in the audience with views related to items on today's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we're going to mention the letters that were sent in. Okay.
Yeah, I know they didn't actually ask me to read them out loud, but I thought I would say that the Assembly, received letters concerned about the Library and Rec Center proposed reductions from Cindy Lagodakis, Orrin Pearson, Matt and Aaron Candle, and a note from Alec McMurrin.
Okay, thank you. I had them stacked up here to do that, but I tried to move right along here. So, yeah, those will be entered into the record, but they just won't be read today. Thank you, Clerk. Next item on today's agenda is visitors' views unrelated to items on the agenda today. Is there any visitors with views unrelated to the agenda? Seeing none, moves us to board, commission, and committee reports. We have one report today. It's from Member Lynn. He's on the SEPA board. So, Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had a meeting the 12th and 13th of December here in Petersburg. of the 3 member communities, and we went through quite a number of discussions. In the packet of materials, I provided some notes of mine to the Assembly, and it's available online. I'm not going to repeat all those, but I do want to make a number of points on this. Is that SEPA has, with the past board leadership and so forth, they've kept the rates of wholesale power the same for 21 years, 6.8%. 6.8 cents. I think that's pretty commendable. And not only that, we haven't had big glitches, the power surges and so forth. Everything essentially has improved. So I have to say, from past leadership and what's going on, I hope we can continue it. The second item I want to talk about is the board approved an $800,000 rebate back to the 3 communities for this coming year. And I'll have to say, and then our rebate will be a portion of that total. I have to say that we probably should not plan on any more rebates coming from SEPA. Number of reasons for that is that some of our facilities now are becoming pretty old, 20 years, 25 years old. And we're going to have to begin to look at replacements. And when we talk about, for instance, the intertie between Tyee and Swan Lake, when we replace that line, which we're going to have to do, it's $12 million. If we replace a turbine or a generator or some other thing, again, I'll give you an example. A power pole that we have just across the street from us, just that one, replacing that power pole with a transformer on it because of this type of power is $1 million. And so where I'm going with that is that we as the board on SEPA are going to have to take a look at beginning to put money aside for replacement of some of these facilities. We've done some really good work in this last couple of years of looking at our facilities and looking at what kind of condition and estimating in the future what the lifespan of them. And now we're back in to putting a little more meat on the bone, so to speak, trying to figure out what best combination of savings, borrowing, and looking for grants that we might have to replace some of those. And with that, I'll move to the next item. The next item I want to talk about is to bring power to Petersburg. There's four underground submarine cables, and we've done a pretty good survey of all those submarine cables last year. All of them thankfully are in very good condition, except there's some question. We weren't able to survey a couple of them we weren't able to survey a couple of them for about 3,000 feet from the shoreline out.
Can I interrupt you just for a minute?
Sure.
Member Mucci, we're having some background noise coming from your line. Is there any way we could stop that background noise?
Maybe
I will do my best here.
mute your phone, maybe, please.
Thank you. Sorry, Member Lynn, but it was getting hard.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
Now that I lost my train of thought, no, I understand. We weren't able to survey part of it from the shoreline out for about 3,000 feet, which we're going to have to do. The one thing we did find is we have one of those cables that it looks like is suspended, and we're going to have to go back and do a resurvey on it, because that's going to cause a little bit different problem for our power if it's hanging off the bottom of the ocean out there. The last item I want to cover is we had some of you probably don't know, we had a landslide. It was November. It was in one of our remote sites on the power on the tie line out there. And luckily it took out one of the power poles, but we were able within 3 days' time to repair that and be able to shift power back and forth between Ketchikan and Wrangell and Petersburg. And I commend the staff on SEPA for all the work they did on that. That was tremendously remote. It was 20 miles out there in the wilderness. And with that, I'm going to open it for questions. If other people have questions for me, I'm certainly...
Any questions of Member Lynn on this report? Member Waller?
Just one question real quick. Hey, Bob, what's the budget reserve, or money saved, with SEPA already? So you said we're not going to see our rebate anymore for several years. But,
we have, I wouldn't have this exact, but plus or minus, we have about $5 million sitting there. And the submarine cables and some of those are insured, but it's only insured to the point at which they're good. In other words, like your house, it devalues over time, and so what your insurance does. Well, the same thing with these. So we're going to have to build that reserve significantly to replace some of these. The cheapest one we have is that Tyee line. Everything else is going to cost much greater, $20-30 million to replace.
Member Stanton Greger, do you have a question?
I did not, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, though.
Oh, I thought okay, I've got a question for Member Lynn, if no one else does before me. In your report here, the written report, you say the board at the December meeting unanimously approved a revised operations plan for Swan Lake to assure higher water levels for backup power generation should that be needed at Ketchikan Public Utilities, because at this year, at one point this fall, we ran low on water in Tyee, so we quit sending them power from the Tyee plant. Does that have anything to do? That doesn't have anything to do with modifying the power sales agreement, does it?
No.
Just kind of curious what that looks like.
That gets kind of complicated. Let me see if I can simplify that. The water levels in the reservoirs that we have for power were significantly low in the fall. And the point that the mayor's making is that we came to a point where we literally shut off any distribution of power back to Ketchikan. And so we reserved, by the power sales agreement, we reserved all the water coming from Tyee to produce power for Wrangell and Petersburg. And we as Wrangell and Petersburg were in really pretty good shape. Swan Lake was not. It was significantly down. The thing that complicated it is that Ketchikan then, I can't remember the exact date, but Ketchikan had a major generator failure. And they've had to replace, and I don't remember all the generators, but they've had to replace, or in the process of having to replace, one of their major generators for millions of dollars down there. And so what their concern is that they also have another generator that they use for startup that provides backup power for them that has probably going to go out. So what Ketchikan asked us to see if we could provide more water in that reservoir over winter at a little bit higher level until they got things back on track again. That's what's behind it.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you for clarification. Is there any other questions of Member Lynn? Okay, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. If I can find it. That brings us to the consent agenda. There's two items on the consent agenda. The first one is the Elks Lodge 1615 liquor license renewal application. And the other item is Petersburg Volunteer Fire Department 2019 gaming permit. I'd entertain a motion to approve both items on today's consent agenda.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Morrell, seconded by Member Stanton Greger. Any discussion on this? Clerk, call the roll.
Kurt?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The consent agenda today passes unanimously. And item 11, report of other officers. The first report is from the CEO of the Petersburg Medical Center.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Phil Hofstetter, CEO of PMC. Just a few updates here. Speaking of funding and cost, obviously that's on foremost of our mind with any agency, in particular with healthcare, trying to meet our budget and also provide cost to the patients that at a reasonable rates. And so one thing that we've been required to do, regulatory-wise, is to provide transparency of pricing, and we have posted our top 10 prices on our website. And we were required to do this as of January 1st, and it's posted and it's available to see, so it's something that I think is a good move to show price transparency across the state. You can actually compare prices with other organizations. Unfortunately, what other organizations have done is they just basically did a whole dump of their whole charge master, which are 10,000 line items, unfortunately. So you have to dig a little bit, but we were curious ourselves to see how we compare. Normally, you couldn't compare other prices. It's considered price fixing in the past, but now you can actually look at prices, and we fare on the low to medium side, which is really great for the consumers and patients here in Petersburg. And again, it's challenging because healthcare costs just continue to rise. That said, and one of the things that I've been tasked to do, again, is to provide services in the community, maintain costs. One of the areas that we can do this is through grants. So I applied for a number of grants to improve some of our services here. One of the grants we did receive recently from the state was for a telehealth grant. And one of the things is to provide improved access to services. So we can't just fly specialists in to Petersburg. It costs a lot of money. It's cost prohibitive. So one of the ways to provide access of care is to use technology. And our community cafe is going to be geared towards technology. And the last, if you haven't known about the community cafe, but the first one we had about a month ago or a month and a half ago was an opportunity to provide feedback and to talk about services, to talk about Petersburg Medical Center, and involve the community is to providing a cafe. And our next one is going to be either at the end of January or mid-February, and we're going to focus on technology. One of the things that we'll be promoting is our new digital X-ray, and we also received some grant funding for that with Rasmussen. And again, some of the opportunities for feedback are going to be related to telehealth. So it's not just about what the model is, but what can we do, what can we obtain, what kind of feedback can we have from the community to deliver those services. So I look forward to some more information about that. We had an active shooter drill last month. That was a great example of collaboration within the community. I'd like to commend law enforcement, the borough, the school, EMS. It was a successful exercise. It's unfortunate. It's one of those things that our workplace violence is increasing, but we do have to drill for those. And as far as the drill is concerned, it was successful. We learned quite a bit in that exercise. And I want to thank all those agencies that were involved. Safety is our concern in healthcare, and again, workplace violence does happen. In speaking of the budget here a little bit, is after hours we have nursing staff that are just there by themselves, and we do have to call the police occasionally after hours. So it is a concern of ours if the police department does reduce force. It's something that was brought up just this morning at one of our staff meetings, and there are a couple of incidents where we had to call the police just in the last month and respond to some escalated violent patients. So just something to be aware of related to safety. That's pretty much all I had at this point. I'll entertain any questions if you have any.
Is there any questions of Phil? Okay, thanks for your report.
Thanks.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the mayor's report. It's fairly short again this time. Southeast Conference Mid-Session Summit. I will attend the Southeast Conference Mid-Session Summit in Juneau, February 12th through the 13th. Attendance was budgeted for and will cost approximately $1,500. As of December 31st, 2018, there was approximately $13,200 was available for use in the Assembly travel and training budget. if travel to the shipping summit is approved, which we're going to talk about later in the meeting, there'll be approximately $11,600 will be available. And also, I will be traveling next month to the Alaska Municipal League Winter Legislative Meeting. Mayor Jensen and Manager Giesbrick will attend the AML Winter Legislative Meeting in Juneau. That's February 19th through the 21st. And this was also budgeted for in last year's budget. And as of 12/31/2018, approximately $5,400 is available for use in the administration, travel, and training budget. And that will be after the Southeast Conference Mid-Session Summit and the Shipping Summit. Approximately $10,100 will be available for use in the Assembly travel training budget. If any other Assembly members would like to attend the winter legislative meeting, they will need to obtain Assembly approval because it hasn't been budgeted for previously. And another item on the Mayor's report today, I'd like to wish condolences from the Borough of Petersburg to Skagway for the loss of Mayor Monica Carlson. And we offer sincere condolences to the Skagway residents and Mayor Carlson's friends and family for her untimely passing. May she and her mother rest in peace. And that's it for the Mayor's report. Now it brings us to the Manager's report. Which, oh, there isn't one. That's right. Due to the holidays, there's no written report. So that makes it go a little quicker. Unfinished business. That's item 14 on today's agenda. And there's an ordinance for third and final reading. And this is ordinance 2018-20. And that's an ordinance amending section 3.08.120C of the Municipal Code entitled Assembly Meetings Agenda, to add the Pledge of Allegiance to the agenda and to change the agenda title of Visitors' Views to Persons to be Heard. So I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its third and final reading.
So move.
Second. Motion's been made by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Walhooter. Is there any discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Brandy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Ordinance 2018-20 passes unanimously in its third and final reading. Other unfinished business today, we have an ordinance for second reading. This is ordinance 2018-21. This is an ordinance adjusting the fiscal year 2019 budget for known changes. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its second reading.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Lynn, and this ordinance is for changing, adopted the budget, and it will allow the use of $400,000 from the sanitation funds and $200,000 from the sanitation's motor pool funds for the baler equipment replacement expense. Is there any discussion? Member Stanton Gregor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to briefly acknowledge Director Cotta for his efforts on this. This is obviously a very big ticket item, and I wanted to publicly say I appreciate his awareness of that and his diligent research to save the taxpayers of Petersburg as much money as possible. Thank you.
Any other discussion? I know at the last meeting, the first meeting of this, Member Lynn had some questions, and I didn't really understand what he was trying to get at, but I had some hesitation in voting for this, and it's the first reading because of approving the funding before we knew what we were going to be getting. And I didn't look into it too fully, but I know in the discussion the last meeting, the Public Works Director was asked about landfills, and he said they're much more expensive than recycling or shipping material out. So I talked to a gentleman that was involved in Ketchikan Sanitation Department for years, and he's on the Assembly in Ketchikan. He said they still have a landfill, but it's a demolition landfill. They don't put any food scraps in it, so they have to separate their garbage out. But I think, in my mind, we should look at all the options before we go forward with a new baler. They also have rebuilt their baler numerous times. We've had ours relined, to my knowledge, once. And he said theirs have been redone more than once. And to put non-garbage items in your landfill, it's $30 per ton. So, and he said they've got a DEC permit for the landfill, and he said they would share the information, who they hired to help set up their landfill, who would show us what they did if we're interested. So I just think that we should be open to all options. So that's just food for thought. Any other discussion? Member Walter?
Maybe a clarification here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if we approve this form, this will come back before us again, with the amount of the piece of equipment. So this is not going to be a final done deal. So, yeah, I agree with you, Mark. I think we ought to look at everything, because I asked that question about a landfill.
I was just sharing the information that I've
perfect. So
over the...
It's okay. Well, I'll be voting for this just to kind of keep the ball rolling, just to kind of see where things end up.
Yeah. Any other discussion? Member Lynn?
Yeah, I spent some time with Chris after the meeting, and I'm still got some concerns, but I am satisfied that Chris is looking at all options related to what we might want to do on Baylor's side. I still think we got some questions that same thing you were just asking, but I also think I agree with the gentleman back here, is that could we in fact increase the amount of material we recycle, and could we do business differently? That's another question, I think, that goes along with what you were saying.
Just to add to the information I gathered from the gentleman in Ketchikan, he said they've got it's like a front-end loader, but many people have probably seen, they don't have rubber tires, they have the steel wheels on them that actually crush a lot of the stuff in their landfill, and he said it reduces their volume dramatically. So anyway, I'm sure Chris, the member, or Public Works Director Codd is looking into all this, and just for clarification for the people listening, I'm going to ask the manager that once we get information, it all has to come back to the borough for approval for expenditure, correct?
Correct. Once the Assembly approves this in 3 readings, we'll prepare an RFP and bring that back to the Assembly to approve the RFP before it is actually sent out on the street. We'll get responses to that RFP, and then it has to come back to the Assembly before it's awarded. So that's kind of the general process. So at any point in time there, the Assembly can either ask more questions, get more information, or say, no, we want added things put in the RFP, or we want to, we didn't get the responses back that we hoped for and expected. So you get 2 big cracks at it, not counting the 3rd reading.
Okay, that's just for the public and for the people listening in the audience to be aware of what's going on. Any other discussion by Assembly members? You have any questions, Member Mucci? Or comments?
No, thanks.
Okay.
No, I understand how the process works, so, yep, I want to see it go forward.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, other unfinished business items. That brings us to potential budget discussion items, and I asked the clerk to print us all out a copy, so we should all have that in front of us here. Find the right form, and then...
Mr. Mayor, if I may...
Yes, I saw your email how to...
Well, just briefly, if I could kind of address the budget to the group.
Sure.
This is always tough for everybody who doesn't live with this every day. The first statement is understanding the difference between the enterprise funds and the general fund. An enterprise fund is something like sanitation or power and light. They are as close to a separate company as you can imagine in how we keep track of things. We can't move money from, let's say, sanitation or power and light into the general fund. So we can't use money from power and light to pay for the police department or Parks and Rec or the library. I know that gets really confusing. People write their checks to the borough. They don't necessarily write it to power and light or to sanitation, but it's set up separately that way, and there's not much we can do about that. So the second part of that conversation is, and this could very well be, my fault. The direction that I've heard from the Assembly prior to today, via informal conversations and various meetings, is not that we don't want to consider cuts if the budget's balanced. What I was hearing from the Assembly was we need to reduce the size of borough government. During the candidates forum, I think both the people seated said that, across the board cuts, cut things, and I think I've heard that from every Assembly member to say, we should be looking to reduce the budget. That's different than saying, don't worry about cutting things unless the budget's not balanced. So again, may very well be my fault. If the answer is we don't want to cut things until we know if the budget's balanced, then this conversation can wait until the department heads finish with their budgets. If we're moving forward with trying to identify places to cut now, no matter what happens with the balancing of the budget, then we need to talk about these things because this is what department heads have to know prior to them doing their budgets. So again, may very well be my fault in misinterpreting what the 7 of you want us to do. So.
Okay, thanks for that explanation. Member Walter.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is great. This is good information to look at. I think it's something that we need to probably take out to the public, as individuals, discuss with our constituents and see what they're thinking. But yet, we're not going to have any idea, as Mr. Kerr said, what we have available to us until after sometime in April. So I think these are good talking points. I think these are things that we need to vet, but I don't think we need to make any decisions today. So I would be willing to just take this information and run with it for a little while and instead of discussing it today.
Member Stan Gregor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In short, I agree with what Member Wohlhuter said. I think it's much more prudent to wait and discuss it when we have more information. That said, though, we had a lot of people that took time out of their day to come and speak to us about some of these things, so I'd like to briefly address some of their concerns, specifically regarding the library and parks and recreation. In short, I couldn't agree with everybody who testified more. Those are critical pieces of our community infrastructure. Lots of us work during the week. Sundays is a great time to be at Parks and Rec. Library already is not open on Sundays, and reducing hours on Saturdays makes it harder for families. The library is a place where you can go, no matter how rich or how poor you are, and enjoy really great access to information. Maybe I'm being a bit dramatic in stating it that way, but I think it's the most critical resources we have here in the community. And on top of that also, I take issue with reductions in those areas because they are things that people and families use regularly. And they're also the primary paying tax base for a general fund through sales tax and property taxes. And so to take the highest tax paying base and then reduce their services seems frankly quite backwards to me as a way to balance the budget. So I want to thank the people who came forward today and shared that. And just to be a bit redundant, I will not be voting for anything such as that when the time comes. That is all.
Any other discussion on the potential budget discussion items? I have to agree that this...
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot of most of the items that are on those lists that Steve provided, I think they all need to get looked at. I know we're not at the point of deciding yes or no right now, but I think we keep hearing from the community that they want to cut state government, and or city government or borough government. There's only so many places that we can look. I think during the revised zoning document, we heard firsthand how some of the private business owners who have roads that aren't on the city, they're not part of the city, those people are going to have to maintain and plow those roads. And I think, just as an example, that anything outside of Service Area 1, those folks are going to have to sort out how they're going to plow those things because the city can't continue to operate like we have in the past. And I think we're doing the borough and the community members the disservice by not looking at the ways that we can downsize city government, because while we might not be looking at the effects right now, these are discussions that need to happen so that we can be kind of ready for as the diminished revenues coming from the state, and certainly not getting anything from the federal government. But no, I think these are all good discussion items that I want to continue to talk about as the budget process goes on. I personally don't want to hide behind the phrase a balanced budget without looking at cuts, because that's kind of the unpopular part of being a Senate member, is looking at cuts that affect our friends and community members around town. So, yeah, I'm in support of looking at all these things that are on the list. I know there's some issues with the police sergeant, and there's some other issues with paid volunteers at the fire department, but I think we all need to kind of look at these things and see if we can support them, or if we can't support them, come up with other ideas. It's always easy to say you want to cut something, but it's really hard to get somebody to put a specific thing that they'd like to see go away. So, yep, I appreciate this list. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Member Michi. I look at this list of potential budget discussion items, cutting or adding the EMT is something that's going to be presented to us in the budget when the department heads meet with the manager and give him their proposed budgets, and then from there we'll be able to, maybe we will be discussing every one of these items at that point, but do we need to discuss it today as well? I'm not sure that we have to. Member Lynn?
Yeah, and I would agree with you on that. The one thing I would like to say is, as we get into the budget, Jody shared with us the table she put together looking at funds essentially that we can expect maybe losing or at least reduced over time. I think when we put this budget together, we can't look at just this year. I think we have to look at next year and the year out too, because if we lose $1 million, we're in deep hurt, so to speak. And how are we going to fix that? Well, I think when we do this budget, I think we have to look ahead, not just at this year. And so that may require us to do something different. And I guess that's my concern as we get into this.
Okay, thank you. So any other comments on the process we're using for the budget as we move forward? And I asked the clerk to print out a copy of the budget calendar, and if anybody was to look at that, the whole month of April is the time to have scheduled budget work sessions. So each department, we could break it down by enterprise fund or general fund, and we've done that in the past, and we can discuss each one or a couple of them in a work session. So if there's no more discussion on this potential budget discussion items as far as taking action, or does Member Merrill have your hand up?
Oh, yeah, I just had a question. Do we have a scheduled work session for this
We don't.
budget?
No.
To work on that?
No. But that is the time that the clerk has scheduled, not the clerk, but the finance director has scheduled for those to take place. And I'm going to ask the clerk, do we need to have a motion to, this is just basically a discussion?
Yeah, I just put it as an action item in case someone wanted to take action, but I think it's just fine to have the discussion that you just had and then move on.
Okay, I was curious. That's what I was thinking too, but I just wanted to get your blessing on that.
Of course.
Okay, so that brings us to the next item on the agenda, and it's new business. Is everybody okay with following ahead, or anybody need a break? Yeah, we'll move on. New business. First item there is Resolution 2019-01, a resolution adopting an alternative allocation method for the fiscal year 19 Shared Fisheries Business Tax Program and certifying that this allocation method fairly represents the distribution of significant effects of fisheries business activity in FMA 18, Central Southeast area. So I'd entertain a motion to adopt this resolution.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Morello to adopt this Resolution 2019-01. And I have a question to the manager. Is this consistent with the past practices? It's just we have to do this every year?
Yes, sir.
Right, I thought it was just a housekeeping thing for people listening. Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Jeff?
Yeah.
Mark?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the resolution 2019-01 passes unanimously. That brings us to item B, fiscal year 2020 capital projects list. I'd entertain a motion to approve the 2020 capital projects list.
So moved.
For second.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made by Member Stanton Gregory, seconded by Member Walhooter to approve the 2020 capital projects list as presented. So discussion on that, and we have a printout of that the clerk gave us in front of us. And it's in two sections, basically. One of them is the list that, and has this already been entered in CAPSIS?
No, sir.
Until we go over it. Okay, correct. Okay, thank you. And then it's project title, and then there's a list of 4. And then there's non-capital issues and concerns, and if those are still what we want to convey to our legislators, then that's the way we'll do it. Is there everybody okay with the list as presented? And just for the listening public, I will read how the first top 4 are prioritized. Scow Bay haul out and wash down pad is number 1, and that's got a $7 million price tag with almost $7 million of funding required. Hospital renovation or replacement is number 2 on our list at $33 million. Clausen Memorial Museum design plans and drawings, it's $125,000. And recycling equipment, glass cutter, tire cutter, etc., for $60,000. Is there any motion to change the order that those are in? And then
I have a question. Looking at the Clausen Memorial Museum design, and earlier we talked, and I would relate this to the hospital administrator, we talked about maybe keeping the hospital in the same location as one option and so forth, and using that area there, the parking lot and so forth. If we did that, would we be better moving this or changing this, what we're going to do here with the museum? In other words, not put this as high a priority. If we were to use that area would be to the east there of the hospital for hospital purposes. In other words, I guess what I'm asking is this in, are we going to spend money here that probably is going to be wasted?
I'm kind of following where you're at. You mean putting money into the museum where it's at, if it's potentially going to be moved in the future?
Yeah, that's my question. Or should it be changed? Go ahead.
Member Stanton Gregory.
I'm just going to think out loud with you here, Member Lynn. So, okay, let's say we get fully funded for $125,000 for Clausen. I mean, I imagine with that we could explore options, again, if we got funded for that.
Yeah.
Could at that point, and then where things stood with the hospital, either ask for that drawing to be, designs to be done at a different location or on that location. I mean, I imagine we'd have some flexibility to that, wouldn't you think?
Well, that was my question. I'm not saying take it off. I'm just saying
sure.
that maybe it ought to be looked also more open so that you look at it in maybe different location.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know. I'm just throwing this out for a thought here.
Yeah, makes sense.
Mayor, may I?
Yes, you can
make a statement.
Yeah.
If I was going to redo this list, I would probably take Clausen off of it and recycling equipment off of there. That's nothing against either of those organizations, and I'd probably replace them with the E911 system and road maintenance, using some of the logic I said. As money gets tighter, it's going to be harder and harder for us to fund things. So, for example, plans for the Clausen Museum, I don't believe they have the money to build a new museum, and I don't think we would be able to do it either. So it's kind of like having to narrow down the list of what are those really drop priorities that there's no other way to fund and that we kind of have to have. 2 of them that are big deals is our E911 system that's getting pretty aged, and our road maintenance. I know that sounds really vague, but we have $87,000 budget. That's it to do road maintenance. It's nowhere near enough. and it's going to get worse. So when you're talking about, I mean, again, I don't think we're going to get any money on any of these projects, to be honest with you. I mean, but if we're going to Juneau and saying, Senator Stedman, Jonathan, this is what we need the most help with, I would think it would be something other than the museum and a glass crusher. That is entirely up to the Assembly. I mean, I'm not trying to step on anyone's toes, but we're going to be hurting for road maintenance, and 911 can't go bad. I mean, anyway.
Member Morrell, you have a comment? Or? So, like the manager was just saying, funding is going to be non-existent from what I've been hearing. I don't know on the federal side if they come through with earmarks, if any money will come from that direction through the state or pass through money, if you want to call it that or not. But we need to submit something, and what we've done in the past, even knowing that there's not going to be a lot of funding, is prioritize lists, and then we also have another list that I think we need to go over, enterprise fund by enterprise fund, probably is the additional capital projects list. I didn't count them up, but there's at least a dozen new ideas on this year's budget. And the manager, I want to thank Steve for pointing those out with putting proposed next to them, so it's new, something new they were asking for, and not expecting anybody to ask for new stuff. We need to figure out what order we want to send it to our legislature, because if I'm not mistaken, haven't we sent everything to our lobbyist in case some funding does arise, come up somewhere?
Through the mayor, once the Assembly is finished with this, we will enter everything that's left into CAPSIS. Right. We will then send these 2 pages with a nice cover letter that will go to our lobbyist. It will also go to our federal lobbyist as well, so that they have it in front of them if something comes their way.
Okay. Member Stanton Gregor.
Yeah, I guess then I would move to amend that project title list to remove the Clausen and the recycling equipment and add E911 and the road maintenance to it.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion to remove Clausen Memorial from the project title top 4 list and the recycling equipment, and add E91 and Borough road maintenance to the list. Is there any discussion on that? Member Walter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I see there's no numbers here on what's priority. We got a letter from the fellow that works out in Scout Bay. He was totally opposed to this wash down thing.
Okay.
So what I was getting at is, do we take the 911 and put it on the top? Is what I was wondering if we do that.
Shall we vote to the amendment to remove the Memorial Museum from the list and the recycling equipment, add the E911 and road maintenance, and then do a prioritizing? Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. One thing at a time. Any other discussion on amending the project title top 4 list of the list? Clerk, call the roll for removing Clausen Memorial and recycling equipment and adding the E911 and road maintenance.
Taylor?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yeah.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes. Okay, so we will move the Clausen Memorial and the recycling equipment to the additional capital projects list. Is that where it'll end up? It'll still be on the list. Is there a motion to prioritize the top 4 subjects on our project title list, or should we leave it as is? I guess we need to do something because we don't know where E911 and road maintenance would be. So I'd entertain a motion to prioritize those 4.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion been made by Member Walhuder, seconded by Member Morrell to prioritize the top 4. Anybody have any ideas?
I do.
Okay.
I would like to, I think that the E911 system and then the road maintenance should be 1 and 2, and then the hospital renovation and Scout Bay. I don't think Scout Bay is crucial right now. I don't think we're going to get money for any of it, but that's my thoughts.
Okay, so if everybody followed what Member Morrell suggested, it would be number 1 would be the E911, system. Number 2 on the list would be road maintenance, 3, the hospital renovation and replacement, and 4 would be Scal Bay. And as we know, like we've talked about a couple times during this meeting in the past, it probably won't be any money, but number 4 might end up getting the funding, but number 1 doesn't. So that's just the way it works. So any other discussion on the prioritization? I mean, it's just a number. Clerk, call the roll.
Taylor?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jeff? Yep. Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Nope. Okay, so that passes with a 6-1 vote, I believe.
Yes.
So now on the same page here, we have non-capital issues and concerns, and I'll just go through them really quick so the listening public knows what we're adding to our list of things we are concerned with. Continuance of the Community Assistance Program, that's revenue sharing from the state, I believe. Full funding for the Harbor Match Program, that's a state program. Support and funding for the Community Jail Program. Support and funding for the School Deferred Maintenance Capital Projects Program, support and funding of the School Board Reimbursement Program, support for naming Petersburg as a health professional shortage area, and support for maintaining the local PERS contribution rate at 22%. That's what the municipalities are liable for, the state's liable for the remainder. So these are things, if we approve it, that we will be lobbying our legislators for in our federal delegation, I believe. Is there, everybody good with the list, or have something you want to add, or Member Lynn?
A couple questions. Is that intended to be in priority order, Steve?
No, sir.
And second question with that is, we have the full funding for the Harbor Match Program, and we say here we have no Petersburg projects funded in these years. Would we be better off at this point to remove that off the list, or just to leave it there? Because I wouldn't see us doing a lot of lobbying for it. Just a question.
Well, Glow might be able to, the harbor master might be able to answer it as well. I think we need to leave it on the list to encourage the state to fully fund it, because now I believe it's a 50-50 match. They put in the money, and then the top project on the list statewide, if there's enough money to fund it, they get funded. Is that, am I even close, Glow?
Yeah, please don't not support this.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
It doesn't cost you a thing. All it's doing is saying that there's support for the 50-50 match. We don't have anything eligible, but by golly, we're going to in the future, and we want to make sure that harbors are, that option is there. They took away, they gave us the harbors, and in lieu of 100% support, they have this program in place so that in the future, when we have to go to rebuild portions of our harbor, we show up with some money. Hopefully the state will match it.
Right. So yeah, that's kind of what I thought. We don't want to take it off the list.
No.
Regardless of whether we have programs we're asking for funding for currently. So is there any other things a person might want to add to that, or are we good with the 7 items that are on there? I'd entertain a motion to add then and approve the non-capital issues and concerns, and then I'd like to actually go on to the next page separately, Petersburg Borough additional capital projects needs, just to make it less to digest at a time.
In that case, I would move to approve the non-capital issues and concerns list.
Second.
A better way to phrase it.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Morrell to adopt the non-capital issues and concerns list for lobbying this year. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Jeff? Yeah. Brandy?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're done with page 1, if you want to call it page 1, and we've approved that. And now I'd like to move on for a little discussion on the Petersburg Borough additional capital projects list. And we could go down the page by department? How would the Assembly like to move forward to see if any of these should be removed from our stuff added to the list?
That'd be cleaner if we went one department at a time, wouldn't you think?
I would think so, yeah. Just like, okay.
Yeah.
So I'd entertain a motion to approve the Petersburg Borough additional capital projects needs list. So for the sake of discussion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion was made by Member Walrider, seconded by Member Stanton Greger. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 separate entities on here. We'll start with the Harbor Department. Member Morrell.
Are these prioritized right now?
My question.
I don't know that are these, I'll ask the manager, are these in prioritized form by the department heads?
In some cases, yes, I've noted it if it's in priority order. If it doesn't say that, so for example, the Harbor Department, it says in order of priority, that's in priority. The school district says it's in priority. All of the others are not. They're just generic. And if I may, I'm sorry, when this is entered into CAPSIS, CAPSIS doesn't include a priority.
So it doesn't.
This only matters because we send it to our legislators. But the actual, what we enter into CAPSIS, it doesn't matter what order it's in.
And with my, I wouldn't call it experience, but with my, I guess it would be experience, if they've seen it happen in the past, you get calls from the legislature saying, well, we've got, what's your number one project? We have some money toward the harbor. And then we could, vet it then. But, okay. So anyway, does this list for the harbor look good? Let me entertain a motion to approve the Harbor Department priority list.
So move.
Second.
Okay, motion been made by Member Walrider, seconded by Member Stanton Greger to approve the Harbor Department's priority list, project title list. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jeff? What, honey?
I think he hung up.
Okay.
Are you here, Member Bucci? Are you there, I guess? You're not here, I know that. Okay, we'll move forward. Might have lost connection there. So, okay, that Harbor Department list is approved. It moves us on to Parks and Recreation Department. I'd entertain a motion to approve the list as presented for sake of discussion.
So move.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Stanton Greger. Any discussion?
Yeah, could we get an idea what your priority order of that would be? I think it's important to put these things in priority order simply because we get to support, the things that the folks want as we go to different meetings. And it's more important, from my perspective, if we know what the priority is that they think need to be done.
By the department head?
Yes.
All right. And I've been thinking about this. There is no Parks and Recreation Board anymore, advisory board or whatever you want to call it. So when we see these new topics, there's 10 total on the list, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of them, if my math is right, are new this year. So I'm kind of curious who proposed them, if this is a proposed idea by the department head, or there is no board, so I'm just kind of curious where the ideas come from.
I can speak to part of this and then defer to Chandra. Many of these ideas have been floating around for a while, and I asked that let's document it, not just have it in the background. Some come from the Friends of Parks and Rec, and some come from Chandra herself, noticing a need. So she can speak to it probably better than I can, but as an example, the story poles in Sandy Beach Park, that's been an idea that goes back prior to Donnie, and it's just been floating around. It's never actually been written down. And I thought, it needs to be out here so the Assembly can say, yeah, go ahead and leave it on the list, or no, we don't want that at all, take it off the list.
Okay, so that kind of gives me an idea of how things are put on these lists then.
But Chandra may have...
Do you have any input?
Yeah, multiple of these items have been pushed forward. Well, okay, I'll start with Eagles Roost stair replacement. That's going to have to be replaced no matter what. In the next couple of years, the stairs are deteriorating. We're currently working, meaning the Friends of the Parks and Rec group, and I are currently working with PFI to try and see if there's sources of funding from PFI to see if they would help with rebuilding those stairs. So one way or another, we are going to have to put some monies towards making that safe, a safe, accessible access route. The replacement floor for the community gym is something that's going to need to happen in the next 10 years. The facility's aging. It was installed in the late 80s, early 90s. That's something that's going to have to come forth. The expansion of the weight room facility, we don't have a lot of room at our facility, so that was something that's been asked by multiple community members for. Just like most other departments, we don't have that much storage, so creating a storage building is why that's on there. The public bathrooms came into play along with the tourism conversation, so that was pushed forward by multiple other entities out in the community. And then the playground equipment for Sandy Beach Park. Sandy Beach is one of our oldest playgrounds, and it's out of compliance. We're going to have to fix some of it here within the next 2 to 3 years. So the other things, the campground at Sandy Beach has been a conversational topic that I've heard since I've been here, so that was put forward. The story poles, I think I spoke to other things.
Okay, thank you, Manager Chandra. Member Stanbaker?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's more of just a philosophical thought as I'm going down the line items here is I feel like I can get lost in the weeds on each and every one of these, and it's my own process, but as several of us have stated already, there is not a lot of money to go around, and I don't know how prioritizing Parks and Rec is going to, not to be, or any of these is going to make a difference at this point with, there's not a lot of water to draw from, so to speak. That's all.
Yeah, I think I'd picking up what you're saying there. It's hard to spend anything if you don't have it.
Well said.
Yeah. Any other comments? Member Walther.
So I was just wondering if I'm picking up on what Jay's saying here, is if we should just go ahead and approve this whole list as it is presented to us instead of going item by item, because obviously they're not prioritized, and we don't have the time to do that now. If they want to go ahead and prioritize it and give it back to us next week, I don't know how soon it's got to be in. But I think we should just approve this, send it on down the line, and just see what happens. The whole thing as it's written.
Right. It's not like they're going to come up with a budget and there won't be any money for the legislature, but it starts on the 15th, so it'll start before our next meeting. And when is there a deadline? Not particularly.
We just got the email opening up CAPSIS.
Okay.
So that means we can start entering things into it. Generally we'll get another letter that says, okay, your deadline is to have everything entered and they close it off. So we have not received that. If you want to take this up at another meeting, you can, but I don't know that it really matters that much. I mean, it's, again, there's not going to be a lot of funding for this stuff.
My thought is we've been kicking the can down the road for a month. So we need to...
I've got a staffing issue that we want to make sure we've got somebody on site that knows how to enter this stuff in.
Right.
And so earlier the better would help us.
There is a few items of concern.
Yeah. And I was just going to say,
to me, that I don't think should be on the list.
And that's a huge deal.
And that's
anything on this
we need a
list.
motion to. That's why I'd like to go. Excuse me for stepping in, but that's why I wanted to do it department by department.
Absolutely.
To make it there. I mean, it's simplified.
Still with you on that one, Mr.
Okay. Thanks. Good. So, is there any proposed changes to this Parks and Recreation Department list? That's the list we're on currently. Member Norheim.
The only one me personally, is the story poles at Sandy Beach. I don't know. I just look at them like they're cute. If we're referring to the story pole as the one at the library, not a totem pole, but a story pole, I personally don't want to see something like that at Sandy Beach. If you want to put up a real totem pole, sure, we could talk about that, but I don't, not a story pole.
Okay, then I guess the proper procedure, since we're going through this maybe a little bit too involved process, but that's the way these are. We've used to have meetings that lasted 4 hours just to address these topics, so I would entertain, you should make a motion to remove the story poles from the list.
Okay, I would make a motion to remove the story poles from the list.
Okay, is there a second?
Parks and Rec Department.
Is there a second to that? Okay, the motion fails for lack of a second, so it stays on the list. That was easy procedure. Any other member, Moreau?
I would like to remove the campground at Sandy Beach. I know I don't really want it to be a camping area personally.
Okay, member Moreau has made a motion to remove the campground at Sandy Beach from the list.
I apologize.
Can you hold on a little bit, Sean? Shall we get a second? Is motion been made? Is there a second?
Sure, second.
Did you make a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made by member Merle, seconded by member Norheim to remove the campground at Sandy Beach from the Parks and Rec Department list. Is there any assembly discussion? And then we'll, okay, Parks and Rec Director had a comment?
Right now, the way that trying to think of the word. Right now, the way that the ordinances read for Sandy Beach is that anybody that reaches out to the police chief and myself can get a permit to camp at Sandy Beach for a 24-hour to 48-hour waiver. So technically, Sandy Beach is a camping park.
By permit.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to give that heads up. Sorry.
So, excuse me for interrupting. So you feel it should stay on the list just for that reason? I mean,
just wanted to make that clarification because if people can and do camp out there, just as a heads up.
So this on the list is proposed to actually put into specific RV sites and 4 tent platforms. That's what the $80,000 funding request is for, if I'm reading this right. So that's what we're at. We're talking about removing from the list.
Correct. I mean, the idea behind it was to encourage tourism in a sense, but you can show up in the Alaska guidebook as having a camping area. Clearly, Sandy Beach is one of the more picturesque places in town, so if we had a place that people could pull in there, I think the original idea was around the corner, farther away from housing. But again, we have no hard and fast plans to do it. It's, again, one of those conversation things that's been talked about for a very long time, and it needs to be blessed by the Assembly or taken off the list.
Right, because at some point, the camping is not allowed just to go camp, right?
Yeah, it's been, for a while now, it's been this permit only where Chandra or, Chief Kerr can actually approve somebody to camp down. It doesn't happen very often, but if we're going to keep doing that, then we need kind of a designated area would be helpful rather than just kind of wherever. Anyway, I believe that was the concept behind it.
Okay, so any other discussion on removing the campground, and which would include 2 RV sites and 4 tent platform sites from the list? If there's none, would member stand here?
Oh, no, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Member Norham.
I mean, I guess we get $80,000, we put 2 RV sites, 4 tent platforms, and they'd still have to get a permit to go there, right?
That rules, if in fact this went forward, the Assembly could set the rules up any way they want. So, okay. Yeah, it's not I don't think we got that far.
Okay. Okay, so, Member Walter.
Thank you. I hate to do this, but this is for Chief Kerr. If we were to do this open this up to, without having to get a permit. I mean, you get a vetted permit, when people decide they want to go there. If these 4 sites or these 6 sites are open to just the public to be able to go use them, say tourists come into town, we're not going to know what kind of activities are going on out there. What do you see your department having to do to monitor to make sure that it's a safe place for everybody to go to?
Actually, I have not seen the camping permits yet. I've never seen anyone take us up on that. But, I mean, the way it's currently done is I would assume it would be just like the alcohol permits where they have to submit a letter requesting it. But if these campgrounds went ahead, then I would suggest that they actually have to go to Parks and Rec to actually pay for it and have their name, contact information, so we can hold someone responsible for damages and we would know who's there. I mean, I wouldn't open it up as like a here, pay here type thing, just pay out there. I would see that as very bad because then we have people taking advantage of it. But if we set it up like the alcohol permits or just have them for the camping where they go register at Parks and Rec before they can use it, I don't see an issue with that.
Okay.
Okay, Member Morrell, you had a comment, or I just imagine you have your hand up? I've got a comment. I mean, we're talking about, I think Sandy Beach Park has always been a kind of a don't want you to camp there type of place. And then and I don't know how much maintenance would be involved if we added 6 sites that would add maintenance to the Parks and Rec staff. And we're already having funding issues already by just suggesting closing the gym. So I'm going to vote to remove this from the list just for those reasons. That's why.
If I can say something else, I mean, as the law enforcement standpoint of it, I mean, we kind of like the way it is now. I mean, because it kind of deters it unless it's a school function or Boy Scouts actually requesting special permission for it. It's kind of nice having all that open space for everyone to use. I mean, I know PIA and the cross-country team all set up stuff, and they took up that entire area. So personally, I don't see where we could fit it in.
Okay, if there's no other discussion on the motion to remove this, the clerk call the roll. And that is what the motion was, to take it off.
To remove the campground.
Right.
Jay?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jeff? Oh, sorry. Kurt?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Okay, so that will be removed from the list. Is there any other motions to modify the list for Parks and Rec?
Just a comment, not a motion, is that I think at some time in the future, we need to look at these items in more detail and put some priorities with the director on these things, but not today. And a number of these things need a lot more attention, in my opinion.
Right. One thing that pops into my mind, I can't make a motion, is the public bathrooms downtown. It's the same situation. We put them in, we have to maintain them, and so anyway, but getting the funding to build them will probably be not a reality, so I'm not too concerned about it. Is everybody okay with the Parks and Recreation Department list as changed? I'll entertain a motion to approve it as changed.
So move.
Second.
Okay, so we better keep on the same track. Member Walter made the motion, Member Morrell seconded it. If there's no discussion, will the clerk please call the roll?
Brandy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay, that passes unanimously. That brings us to Public Works Department. I'd entertain a motion to approve the Public Works Department project needs list as presented.
So move. Second.
Motion be made by Member Morrell, seconded by Member Walter. Is there any proposed changes? Member Norton.
The paving of the dump hill, is that going to make it really slippery? I mean, more so than dirt. If you got heavy vehicles moving up and down the hill, and then you got that turn right at the bottom. Are we going to end up with dump trucks in the ditch there if you pave that hill?
Yeah, I'm not sure. So that might be a question for
Chris's house.
Chris. Can you answer that, Carl? Would you be willing to answer that?
That's a good question. It's a good concern. The reason that this was put on the list a couple of years ago was basically that hill is so hard to maintain. It's so steep. It's very hard to grade and be able to keep it in good shape. And so it washboards really quickly. Water running down, it also doesn't do it any good. So it really is hard on the not only the borough equipment that goes up and down the hill on a regular basis, but any customers that go to the landfill also are in. It's hard on their vehicles as well. So that's the reason it was put on there. The question about slipperiness, and especially in the wintertime, is a good one. At any time that, because that hill is so steep, that customers and employees have to use caution already. With a paved surface, it'll be easier to scrape it down to bare asphalt, and we did keep some salt up at the landfill to be able to treat the hill in times when it was really bad. That could probably continue. Just some information.
Okay. Does that answer your question? Moving on. Yeah. So, if there's no amendments to this Public Works Department list, I'd entertain a motion to approve it as presented.
I already did.
I did? Okay, let's vote. Too many motions and stuff, but I think it's the proper way to do it to track.
We're doing good.
Okay, please call the roll, clerk.
Mark?
That's all of us, yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Okay, the Public Works Department project needs list passes as presented. Next, that brings us to the Petersburg Public Schools District, and this is in priority. I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Morrow. Any discussion? Member Stanton Gregor?
Yeah, just briefly, because I don't see anyone here from the school to advocate their priority list. I think we just keep it like it is. If they've proposed this is what they think is important, and hope the state agrees with some of it.
Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll on the schools list.
Bob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Okay, that brings us to water and wastewater departments. I'd entertain a motion to approve the project needs list from the water wastewater department.
So moved.
Sure.
Okay, motion been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Morrow. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Kurt?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Brandy? Yes. Jay?
Yes.
Okay, that brings us to Power and Light Department. I'd entertain a motion to approve the Power and Light Department capital project needs list.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Morrow, seconded by Member Walhooter. Any discussion on Power and Lights list?
Mayor, just one statement. This list is not complete. I mean, Carl can speak better tonight. Once we get the final report back from the consultant, the list is likely to grow.
I was going to ask.
This is what we know about right now.
Right, so it's a moving target, so I don't see why we shouldn't approve it. And we'll be discussing that further as we get on into the budget process. Okay, clerk, call the roll.
Kurt?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Power and Light list passes unanimously. That brings us to the Petersburg Medical Center. I'd entertain a motion to approve the list as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Morrell, seconded by Member Lynn. Discussion. Clerk, call the roll.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes. Okay, next on the list is Public Safety and Support. I'd entertain a motion to approve as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, motion been made by Member Burrell, seconded by Member Walhooter. And I see the E911 list is on here, so that got moved, correct? Correct. So that would be the only change that's already been made. Any discussion on this? Clerk, call the roll.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Okay, that brings us to other. It's not a department, but these were proposed, I believe, by the manager was the Baylor, and believe Member Mucci proposed asking for funding for the purchase of the Ocean Beauty facilities. I'd entertain a motion to approve this list as presented.
So move.
Second, for the sake of discussion.
A motion made by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Stanton Gregor. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Member Morrell.
I would like to make an amendment to remove the purchase of Ocean Beauty.
Is there a second to the amendment?
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Morrell, seconded by Member Lynn to remove the purchase of Ocean Beauty facilities for $3.4 million from the list. Any discussion? Member Norheim.
Obviously Jeff's not here. Could we get any explanation as to why this was on here?
Maybe the manager
I can try to. I think Jeff's, in his mind, it could have been a place that tour ships could pull up to. I think he talked about, the facility itself could end up being, restaurants and shops, similar to, I guess, something Huna has. I mean, I've never been there, so I can't speak to it. But I think in his mind, it was something related to the tourism industry. And he asked me to put that on there.
And I have the same feeling. That was his motivation for putting it on the list, was to turn it into a convention center, is what he said at a radio show. And then it was also on the list at the last PEDC meeting. It was just an idea to put in a couple restaurants. And my concern is I think it's like a 100-year-old building. It used to be the steamship dock, and it's already been assessed at having close to $1.5 million worth of piling damage underneath it, so you got to tack that on. So I don't think it's a fiscally good idea at this time to even ask for funding for it. So is there any other discussion on removing Ocean Beauty from the list? If not, clerk call the roll.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
No.
Brandy?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Kurt?
No. Okay, it passes with a 4-2 vote with Member Walherder and Member Stanton Gregor opposed to removal of it.
Now the motion as a whole?
Yes, I was just getting there, yeah. I will vote on keeping the Baylor replacement on the list. Clerk, call the roll. Doesn't look like there's any discussion.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Okay, we're done with that. Is everybody good to just keep plowing forward? I've had 2 assembly members state when the meeting started that they need to leave shortly before 3.
We take 5 anyway?
Yes, we can take 5. I think we should be able to get through the rest of the meeting. When we return, we'll return to item 15C. Okay, I see we're all in the room. Can we soon call the meeting back to order?
No, obviously he's got. I'll go tap him. I'll tap him.
Thank you. I don't like using the gavel.
Good thing you do that. I'll give you a on the shoulder to never stop the show.
Thank you for the cats are all heard. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order, and we're on item 15C under new business. And this is authorization for the Mayor Jensen to accept for public use and for public purposes the real property dedicated to the public for trust land survey 2018-12-P-1A and P-1B subdivision, including easements, right-of-ways, alleys, and roadways. I'd entertain a motion to authorize this signature. So move.
Second.
Okay, so this, just to explain to the public, this is just something that the state requires is for this mayor's signature on the actual map. And I don't really know the reason, but we've done it in the past, so it's, if there's no other discussion, I'll have the clerk call the roll. Any other discussion? Being no interest in discussion, will the clerk call the roll?
Brandy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to item D, and this is an authorization for Mayor Jensen and Manager Giesbrecht to attend a shipping cost summit in Ketchikan on January 24th, 2019. I'd entertain a motion to authorize this travel.
Don't move.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Rural, seconded by Member Walherter. So this came about, just to explain, it was whatever day the SEPA meeting was here. The mayor of Wrangell and the manager of Wrangell were both here. They're both on the SEPA board, and then the mayor of City of Ketchikan was here, and their manager was here, and the mayor of Wrangell thought it would be a good idea to try to open up the dialogue between the communities statewide that are affected by barge shipments, barge line transportation, and invite Alaska Marine Lines and Sampson Tug and Barge to the summit. And that's what this is about, just to authorize the expenditure for the manager and I to travel, and it would be $1,600. Whether this even takes place or not, we're not sure. It's just there's been a letter sent out to all the communities that have service from the barge lines to see how much interest there is in having this summit, and well, who knows whether the barge companies will attend if there is one. So it may be money that doesn't even get spent. So is there any other discussion or questions?
I got a couple questions. One of them I have is related to yourself on this, is that if there's promises or decisions made at that summit that involve the borough, for instance, i.e., in other words, decisions where we'd have to provide more money, or decisions where we'd have to provide resolutions and so forth, and you have to I assume then that you would bring them back for approval by the assembly. But then the other part of that question, I guess I'd have, is at what point then would you want the assembly to weigh in on some parts of this, I guess is my question.
Without knowing if there is going to be a summit or what the summit will consist of, and I guess start off with that being said, maybe if we hear that there is going to be a summit and what the agenda for the summit is, we can discuss it as an assembly again. But I would fully intend, if there was any position to be taken by the Petersburg Borough, it would be vetted by the assembly at a future time. I mean, that would be, I think, the correct policy.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that answer the question?
It does.
Yeah, so I mean, do you have any input in this, Steve? Have you heard anything from anybody on this yet?
No, but I mean, I'll make a general statement, see if the assembly can get behind this. We all think the cost of shipping is too much. That's kind of the premise behind this meeting, and we were fairly certain that everybody would agree with that, and the impression I get is this is a summit meeting to get support, meeting from other Alaska communities, to invite Sampson and AML there to have this conversation so maybe they can explain some things. But it's also just to let them know, hey, look, we're noticing it. I mean, all of us have community stories where people have stopped and not done projects because of purely the shipping cost. And so thanks to the Wrangell mayor and their borough manager that brought it up, and hopefully something comes of it and AML can help us out in some fashion. But anyway, I mean, I think the premise is we all think shipping transportation costs have gotten way out of line, and we want to know what we can do to help our communities. So,
Member Stanton-Gregor?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it strikes me as just a good first step in whatever process we need to take as a community. So I'll be voting for this.
Okay, well, then I think, like I said, the way this is moving forward, well, I guess it's January 24th is the proposed summit, so I think that might have been a little ambitious on the date, but we'll see what happens. So, is there any other questions? I can't really answer much because we don't really know what it is yet. So, clerk, call the roll.
Mark?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is E, and this is authorization for member Lynn to attend the Alaska Municipal League Winter Legislative Conference. I'd entertain a motion to authorize this travel.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by member Morrell, seconded by member Stanton Gregor. And member Lynn is still on the policy committee at AML, so they meet every time there's a meeting, I believe, right, Bob?
Right. There are 5 people on that policy committee from throughout the state. Just for the assemblies, one person covers public safety, 1 transportation, 1 economic development, 1 education, and 1 natural resources for all of Alaska. My expertise area is the natural resources, including the fisheries, the water, everything on that. And I'm not sure what's going to happen this year with the new governor. What the policy committee does is sometimes, what you don't see is that sometimes there's daily movement of that committee of making decisions to send to the board because the legislature has taken some position on a bill. And you have to, and so what we do is it will provide a recommendation back to the board of what position we ought to take as Alaska Municipal League, and that's the background behind it. How much would be going on there, I'm not sure yet. So I want to look at that before I actually, that I actually do go. But I'd like to have the authority to do that.
Okay, thank you, Member Lynn. Is there any other questions? Clerk, call the roll.
Brandy?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes. Okay, that is authorized with the unanimous vote. Next item on the agenda is F, approval of suggested, no, did that. No, we didn't. Approval for suggested schedule for review of proposed zoning map. Entertain a motion to approve the schedule.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by member Morrell, seconded by member Walhooter. Just for clarification to the public, this is the zoning map that goes along with the rezoning ordinance that will be that was voted for, and the zoning map review schedule, January 29th, public notice, mailing of the map, revision to all property owners, February 12th, public hearing by Planning Commission, March 12th, 2019, public hearing, consideration of amendments, recommendation from the Planning Commission to the Assembly. April 1st would be the first reading of approval of the maps. May 6th, the second reading. May 20th is consideration of amendments and the third reading by the Assembly. Just for the people listening, if you're interested, that is the schedule. So that is what we're voting on here today. Is there any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Jay?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Okay, so the schedule for the zoning map is approved unanimously. Next item is G on the agenda, Icicle Seafoods request to terminate Tidelands lease of parcel number 01-007-200. I'd entertain a motion to terminate the lease.
So moved.
Yes. Or second?
Second.
Motion been made by member Norheim, seconded by member Morrell. Is there any discussion? And it looks like the property is just right between trade union. It's in the water. It's just between Trident's ice chute and Icicle's unloading station there. So how many years are left on the lease? Is this in here?
2044. Many years, actually.
Yeah.
But they actually haven't used, I guess, the parcel since 2013, and they thought they had already requested termination of the lease. And so when Patrick was questioned about the bill, he was a little surprised and called me to ask what he needed to do. And their lease does say, of course, that by mutual agreement of the lessee and the lessor, it can be terminated. But I did double check with Glorianne, and you're welcome to ask her questions, but she said that there's no more pilings for them to tie docks up to or anything, and they haven't used it seriously for years.
There used to be a float there, and it's been a long time since it's been gone. It was used for pot storage and whatever, so. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Jay?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Okay, vote is 6-0 to terminate the lease for that Tideland lease with Icicle Seafoods. Communications, are there any communications by Assembly members or staff? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to Assembly discussion items. Is there any recognitions by any Assembly members or staff? Okay, seeing none. Next item is on the Assembly discussion items is B, and it's a designated Assembly seats for election purposes. Member Michi asked to have, Member Stanton Gregor asked to have this on the agenda, so Member Stanton Gregor, would you like to speak to this?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the next meeting, Clerk Thompson, I'd like to have this as an action item, but I just wanted to kind of speak a little bit to it. Kind of my way of processing is I like to ask lots of questions of random people in the community about different issues, and this one was no different. So asked people what they thought, and I got a pretty wide swath of feedback. The most relevant to my mind, though, that really resonated with me is I know like 10 other communities vote the way we do, pick no more than 2 out of blank, but it makes for a poorer democracy, I think. As an example, if I want to vote for an Alaska senator, we got currently Senator Murkowski and Senator Sullivan. I know they run in different years, so bear with me on the example. When election time comes up, it doesn't say Murkowski, Sullivan, vote for no more than 2. You either choose Sullivan's seat to run for or Murkowski's, and across the board for different seats like that. And what it does, if we did it on a local level, is you'd be assuring that one candidate gets more than 50% of the votes. That you have like a true, majority of voters selected this candidate. And I know there's some anecdotal evidence that, I voted for one person because I really wanted this person to get on there. And albeit anecdotal, if that would add 25 more, 25, 50, pick a random number more votes total cast for candidates, well, that's better for democracy too. So I encourage members of the public to keep talking to me about that one and try to talk me out of thinking that way, because I'm definitely open to it. But right now, I think it'd be better for our local democracy to do it that way. My 2 cents.
Okay, any other discussion on this item? And like Member Stanton Gregor said, he's going to ask to have it as an action item on the next agenda. That's probably a good way to do it, so we, make a decision. Member Lynn.
Just a question. Do we need then as an action item a actual proposal vetted by the attorneys to, what are you thinking?
Well, okay, so there's a couple different ways we could go. We could make it an action item where just the Assembly decides, yes, we're interested in moving this forward because it would be an ordinance revision to do it, or no, we're not. That way, the time and effort going into writing the ordinance doesn't happen unless you guys say, yeah, we want to move this forward. Or you tell me to figure out how to write an ordinance now, and I do it all, and we see what happens.
Member Stanton Gregor.
How about I get with the clerk before the appropriate deadline, and we'll craft a way to move forward. Does that work for you?
Sure.
There we go. Let's get with you before the next meeting.
Sounds good.
Cool.
To simplify things, since the clerk has suggested just to, put it on the action item to move it forward as the Assembly and then draft the ordinance and then read it, makes it a lot simpler than, and then maybe it's something that should go to the vote of the public at some point. So then that wouldn't actually take effect till the election in 2020, because it'd be on the ballot in 19. So right. All kinds of things to consider. So, any other discussion? Okay, so we've got some direction on that. The next discussion item is process for scheduling work sessions. The clerk and I have talked about this and decided we would talk about this. And my feeling, and I think if I remember right, it was the clerk's thought as well, was to actually vote as an assembly for a work session instead of just talking about, well, we're going to have it in February, and then we're talking about it again. We just like the last topic, put it on that agenda as an action item to choose when you want to have the meetings. Is that what we were figuring?
Rather than having it as a discussion item where everybody says, okay, Debbie, please do a doodle poll and see what day and time we can figure out, and then turns out Lots of assembly members don't want to even have the work session, so it's kind of wasted time. So my thought is, if we have it as an action item, whether or not we have the work session, first of all, yes or no, and then if yes, if you guys can pick a date and time right then, great. If you can't, then the doodle poll.
We're trying. Strikes me as more efficient. Makes sense, Debbie.
Number
Well, I would agree with you on that. The other part of that is that we go around sometimes about, we want to have a work session, but we don't know what we want to have it on. And so I think it would be, as part of that, it would help if we would at least be able to state what the purpose of it is and have an objective or something we have definitive before it's...
Like an action item.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
So anyway, any other discussion on that? Entertain a motion to adjourn. So move.
Oh.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Meeting's adjourned. Now we're off.
We're going to win one, huh?
You're like me. I'm going back to work.
Do the things that I'm looking for necessarily. That's